Hi, everyone. It's Martha Novak, and this is a show called Real Talk with Martha Novak. We talk about all sorts of things, psychological things, business things, personal things, relationship things, and much more. Today, we're talking about something highly personal, and that is the behaviors of emotionally insecure people. We really want to all grow up on the inside. That's so important. And so we're going to talk about what shows in all of us when we're not addressing the inner. Every one of these things can be fixed. When you, for example, have a tendency to blame, what we do instead of blaming is the emotionally mature person goes, what's not right with me? What am I upset about? Most of the time, it's an inner frustration with yourself. It's not about the other person at all. But everything on the outside triggers you to explore the inside. If you don't know how to read those signs and realize that everything points inward, then this show is for you. So let's go on and do a quick prayer, as I always do, to get us all on the same page, point us all in the same direction. And also, my prayers are always to help us see more, that we may really shift these behaviors and become more solid in ourselves. Dear God, thank you so much for the opportunity of coming together the way we do every Sunday morning at 10 o'clock, or most Sunday mornings at 10 o'clock. We thank you so much, dear God, for the opportunity to open our minds to see, hear, sense, and know what you would have us do next in our own lives. For you are a living and personal God within us, as we are the aspects of God that we are. We open ourselves now to the oneness with all of life. For while we are not the trees in the forest and the dog at our feet and the sun that's shining in the sky, all of these aspects are you, as we are. And we celebrate the oneness with everything. And now we open our hearts and minds past knowing anything. When we feel we have to know something, we're often blocking information. So we're going to offer that in surrender to you for these 90 minutes and say, we know nothing, but it is the you in us, the you in all things that know everything. We open to knowing that and assimilating with that. We thank you so much, dear God. We say this prayer in your name, in the name of the Ascended Masters, our love-centered guides and friends, and in the name of each and every person listening to this show today. And so it is. Amen. One of my favorite prayers is, God, enter here. And that's what we ask today. We do seem to have a person on hold today, and I'd like to go to them in just a moment. I do want to say our guest call-in number is 347-850-1647. I am telling you that is for getting on the air. So if my 727 number that is holding right now for me is not trying to get on the air, then I'm going to suggest that you all go to my website, which is marthanovak.com, Novak.com. And under radio shows, you can tune into this show on Blog Talk Radio or on Facebook Live. And that's the way to listen but not be on the air. Sometimes I surprise people. Now, if you have a question or a comment, I am simply delighted that you call in. So I am going to go to this person right now, and we'll see what we've got here. And let's see if we can bring him on the air. Hello,
Hi, Martha. This is Kate. Hello.
Oh, hey, Kate. How are you doing?
Doing well. Thank you so much. Your enthusiasm is jumping across the telephone.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. How can I help you today? What can we talk about?
Well, Martha, I was led yesterday to this program, and so right now I'm in the front pew, and I raised my hand in the same enthusiasm with which you greeted me.
Well, how nice, Kate.
At this time, I'm just looking for a message.
Okay.
And I am so...
Kate, I don't know whether you are in the car, but you have faded out. So you're kind of coming and going. Are you in a car right now or something?
I am coming out of the garage into the house, Martha.
Well, there you go. That was probably what it is. We hit a little dead spot in the garage. Well, I'll tell you what, darling. Kate, why don't you listen? Let's keep the line open. This is for call-ins, this line, but I am just delighted to know you're there and to talk with you. So I'm delighted that you were led to this program. I'm going to leave this line open in case you have any questions or comments as we talk about this. How's that?
Well, thank you, Martha. I have come off the queue. I have a question. I'll re-enter the queue.
I think that's a wonderful idea. Thank you so much, darling. Okay?
All right. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you for being with us. There you go. It's a good team. All right, darling. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye. Okay. So, that was fun. Let's begin what we're talking about today. This is a question of what insecurity looks like. And I do want you to know what it looks like. You know, I used to have a big acting school. And it was really interesting because I would train people for theater and film. And they would come in often with their auditions, and I would say to them, either that or in a scene study class, I'd say, that particular moment that you're doing doesn't look good. And they would argue with me because they wanted to do it. Okay, that's fine. I had an advantage at that time, which was that we filmed everything. So I just put them on camera, and every single time they would say, "You're right, that doesn't look good." This is rather what this show is about today. It's about what are your behaviors that are giving your insecurity away and how to fix this, which is going to be, let's make sure that you're not insecure anymore, which is, by the way, what every single show we've ever done on Blog Talk Radio or Facebook Live is about. It is about that, having that strong, powerful, but not dominating, but strong and powerful sense of self. Who you really are, fully present in this and every moment. You see? All right. Now, with that said, when I do my research, and I do an awful lot of research for these shows, I am alarmed by all the sexist ideas out there that don't call themselves sexist ideas. So I've got some articles in front of me, and listen to these titles. 3 mind games that most insecure men play in relationships. Beware, if your man does these 15 things, he's majorly insecure. Interesting, huh? Because I'm going to tell you, this is not a man-woman thing. This is an everybody thing. And I really do get very dismayed with articles like this, because while they say good things that I want to talk about for everyone, they're written from the point of view of them and you And guys, this is a we society and consciousness. This is not a them and you society. This is all of us together. We are one. Let's all heal and get well as much as we can. And it is about personal responsibility in that. So, while I might pull some articles like this, and I will cite them, but I must say they dismay me in a way when they have to resort to titles like this, because these are grossly, in my opinion, inaccurate. This is not a man-woman thing. Everybody does this. Now, of course, when I'm talking about this, I'm trying to excavate what you do or what you are observing so you're more discriminating. Well, hello, everybody. Well, I can't speak that name. I'm having a new, well, hello, Michelle. That one I can speak. Moamin, is that how do you pronounce your name? Moamin? Beautiful name, though. Very, very poetic. Anyway, we are awfully glad to have all of you listening into the show. I see my dear Kat and other people here, so thank you so much for joining us today. Those of you who are on Blog Talk Radio, I have people listening on Facebook Live, and how they get in touch with me is they write me. So their questions and comments will come across, and you'll hear me occasionally saying hello to everybody that I recognize that are beginning to tune in. All right, so these insecurities also are the games people play in relationships. Not all intimate relationships, but in every relationship, because whatever appears in intimate relationships can sometimes appear in more public relationships. For example, every job you ever have, after 2 or 3 months, it's going to turn into your family. Unless you have healed those old childhood wounds, you're going to have some of the same things resurface. So, if I am confronting anybody in front of me who says I'm not a game player, as a lot of people say to me when they come to me for sessions, I'll say, well, define the games. What games are you talking about? And in all my years of work, I've never once seen anybody that really can define those games. The interesting thing is, one of the reasons they can't define them is they are playing them too, but in a more subtle manner, or they're playing different ones than the ones they abhor that somebody else is playing. Problem is with that is the disregard of looking at self. And guys, I'm going to say we must look at ourselves. If this is going to be a better world, your personal world and mine, and if this is going to be a better generalized world, then we need to do individual work on ourselves, okay? And we'll talk about that as we go, because all of these behaviors, all of the insecurities that all of us feel are transient. They are to be transcended, you see? They just are. And every single child growing up comes out of a fear-based experience. You have 2 parts of you, just to put everything on the table before we launch into the new information. You've got the ego child's mind. That's the part of you that still thinks like a child. And you've got the highest self, the part of you that is more connected to the base of love and who you really are, as the aspect of the living God in you that you are. That said, those 2 parts are operational. Certainly, when you're playing these games, and when you are insecure, it only becomes part of one mind, and that is the egoic child's mind. The highest self mind is not insecure. Nor is it always bold, but it's sometimes just neutral. We're listening. We're seeing what we don't know. But it's not a threat that we don't know anything. That's the egoic child's mind. You can see the difference. Okay. Now, in my opinion, there are two kinds of insecurity. There is situational insecurity that could result from a nervous laugh, okay, that triggers that. And there is a chronic insecurity in our lives that appears every single day and is a motivating force. And that's the one I want to talk about today, all right? Because there are good reasons that we have chronic insecurity. By the way, usually anxiety goes along with this. And you know why anxiety goes along with it? Because you're not dealing with the base of what's making you insecure, because no human being in its natural state is insecure. We have learned that. We've learned that, and we are still following some of those childhood patterns. But the fact is, we're here to be who we really are. We're here to contribute out of who we really are. You can't contribute really in the way all of us want to contribute until you find out who you are. It comes out of that kind of unique quality that has to do with you. Okay. So let's talk about insecure people, insecure games. Recognize yourself. Please recognize others. Certainly, one of you're all very nice people. I know that about you. But one of the things that very nice people do when they are still in the ego child's mind is leave out another God-given gift, which is extremely important for all of us, and that is discernment. We need to be discerning. We need to see somebody and see all sides of them. We can't just launch into help. I think that one of the lovely characteristics about people in general is that we all want to help. We all want to be connected to another human being. But without discernment, that makes you enormously vulnerable, doesn't it? Because all Ted Bundy, the serial killer, had to do was approach lovely women and have a cast on his leg or his arm and say, "Can you help me carry my books to the car? And could you help me put them in?" And they'd lean over to put them in, and he'd hit them on the head, and they were gone. Guys, we have to be discerning. We have to be discerning, and you have to listen to it. Two parts to it, right? You got to get the message, and then you have to listen to it and do what it says. So we're going to talk about that too. So let's talk. This first few things that I'm going to say here came from our article, again, the title of which I think is very unfortunate: 3 Mind Games That Most Insecure Men Play in Relationships. I really hate that title. With all due respect to Catherine Brown Ramsperger, who describes herself as an expert. And I got to tell you, that the whole thing bothers me. We might know more about a subject than somebody else, but don't you be calling me an expert. I'm not. I just do what I do, all right? Darlings, we just have to be careful of our egos. We just do. And yes, good morning, Kat. Good morning, Michelle. I'm just so glad to see you all. All right. One of the games that people play, men and women, is the blame game. And I want to tell you that words can hurt you as much as a physical attack. If those words are frequent, unpredictable, and completely unsupportive in a repetitive way. People point fingers at other people to get the upper hand, not because they really are superior, but because they feel bad about themselves. If you find yourself doing this, what's really important is to recognize that your tendency to blame another person is a signpost that's saying what's not right in you in this moment. In this moment, what's going on? You may not want to do your taxes. You may not want to go to the party tonight. You may not want to call your mother. Whatever it is that you feel forced to do must be addressed instead of blaming another, because if you blame another, and we'll address the blamee in just a minute, if you blame another person, you really are putting some terrible walls up between you and your natural connectivity with other human beings, which is, by the way, what life is about, that kind of cooperation and kindness with other people. It's very unfortunate we do this, and some families are more blame-oriented than others. I think that's really important to acknowledge. If everybody blamed in your family, you not only have a habit to overcome, you've really got to look at why everybody did what they did, so you can say, I don't want to be part of that aspect of my family anymore. It's not a healthy thing. Sometimes blaming and projection can be largely unconscious. You'll hear people say, well, you're hearing it as blame, but I'm not blaming, but of course they are. This makes it very dangerous for not only the relationship, for the person who is the blamer, because they never get to their stuff. It's just going to happen over and over and over again. And do you think that's going to make anybody happy? It's not. The reason one blames must be addressed. A simple, I don't want to do this, and having your partner or your friend or someone validate you and say, I don't want to do it either. If there was a way to get out of it, we would. We can't. Let's do it together. Let's go do something nice for you after you do this. If I can't participate in it, there's a way to make it better. But a blamer is not allowing you or anybody else or themselves to make it better. Right? They just are trying to shove some of their feelings that are unresolved across the table at somebody else. It's not a healthy thing to do. Blamers actually lack some self-esteem. They lack that sense of self that is able to say, I have this to do and I don't want to do it. Or here's the way I feel about something. And I'm going to say to all of you, one of the most powerful things you can do is start developing an emotional vocabulary. How do you do that? You've heard me say this before. I'm going to say it again because it really does work. You go to the internet, you look up lists of emotions, you get the longest one you can find, you acknowledge to yourself that every single word falls under one of two categories, either fear-based or love-based, and then whatever you're feeling, you sit down and you try to put words to those feelings. That's one of the first ways to start this. I'm feeling this is a very big acknowledgement. You see, what happens with blamers is they don't acknowledge how they feel. They just go after somebody else. They don't say, I'm feeling vulnerable because I have to do this. I'm feeling so tired. I don't think I can do this. I don't feel good. I don't know how to do this. It's confusing me. I'm afraid. It all comes down to that. And why isn't that all right? Guys, we are so busy in our lives taking out the aspects of our humanness that we think are distasteful or weak or something, that we never get around to acknowledging the whole person and putting our arms around that person. And I've got to tell you that is difficult, because that's somebody who is blocking the energies of all they are and saying, no, that's unacceptable, that's unacceptable. But if God is everything, If God is the light and the dark and the fear and the love and the joy and all of it, then you're blocking aspects of God that can come into this moment right now and help you create the life you want. You need this energy. So when you release something in energy, which is what I do when you're in session, help you release some of these energies, either through talk or through what I call my format. When I move this energy, all of a sudden it's not locked up anymore around an event. It comes flooding into the present, so you have more energy here to create the life you want. You are in charge. So we can either keep that energy stuck and say, I'd rather avoid it, not look at it, not look at why I'm blaming everybody, not look at me and what was happening in this moment that I can't deal with emotionally. And we can start talking about that language of emotion and saying, I feel very vulnerable doing this, and yet I've stepped up to do it. What can we do about that? And have a dialogue with somebody who loves you. Now, here's the interesting thing about that. That's intimacy too. Intimacy is not just taking off your clothes and jumping into bed and having sex with somebody. Let me tell you, intimacy is letting yourself be real with somebody else and saying what's really wrong and together figuring out a solution. Because if you're the kind of person that doesn't do that, I'm going to tell you, you feel abandoned and alone a lot of the time. When you yourself are creating that. You understand? Okay. There are emotion like anxiety and like the tendency to blame and like those things must be waked up to in awareness. You have to look at these things now as a street sign. Okay, I want to blame. I have a tendency to blame right now. Then let's take that information and say, what am I upset about? Let's see that I feel anxious right now. There's the sign because I'm feeling it in this room. And what does that mean to me? What direction am I going in when my higher self is saying go into another direction? Because anxiety is often just a sign that says you're heading the wrong way, you're thinking the wrong thought, you're doing something that isn't in your best interest, is not going to get what you want. I happen to think anxiety, when it is a normal, natural anxiety, is one of our marvelous protections. It's there to say, don't do that, or drink more water, because I notice that as I'm getting older, that there is an anxiety. If I hadn't had enough water by the time I go to bed, there's that little anxiety. So you make sure you drink enough water, okay? Because there can be a cellular anxiety as well as an emotional anxiety. Feels the same, but it's not, because it has a different cause, okay? All right. It's so important when any of these characteristics come up that we are going to talk about today, that one look at oneself and find out why you're doing it. That's the key to life. It isn't what you're doing that's the important thing as much as why you're doing it. If you know what your motivation is, you got really a leg up on almost everything, because you can then change your motivation. Then it is not a compulsion or an obsession. You can change it because you've seen it with great clarity. Okay. Now, if we're talking about blame, we want to say that there are two parts to blame, right? There's the blamer and there's the blamee. If you are a blamee, it's very important for you to have done work on yourself or do it now so that you have a very strong sense of self. You see, when we are in the egoic child's mind, We don't have good boundaries. We don't know enough about psychology. We don't know what's going on here. We don't know what's our responsibility. We don't know what is somebody else's responsibility. We're busy protecting our vulnerable parts. We are not in touch with what we're doing. Okay, that is contributing to this. So it becomes enormously important for everybody to grow up. Everybody has to grow up here if this is your way. Sometimes I think, hey, Hope, I'm so glad to see you, darling, who has the best name in the world, Hope. So, sweetie, thank you for joining us today. I was going to give you a call later. So, guys, if you find yourself the blamee, I'm going to tell you right now that there is a world of difference being that vulnerable little girl or boy in an argument with somebody and knowing who you are and having a strong sense of self and knowing when somebody puts their toe over the line and is accusing you of something you have not done out of their own insecurity. So I say whether you are the blamer or whether you are the blamee, it's extremely important to grow out of these issues, grow out of this thing. Because I'm going to tell you, if you are the blamee and you already feel terrible in your life and you haven't found yourself, that can devastate you. That can devastate you. It's too much because you're already blaming yourself for everything. You do understand now, I think, having listened to me before, that whatever you're accusing somebody else of, you're doing. So if you're saying somebody has abandoned you, you have abandoned yourself. You may want to spend more time with them. That's something else. But we can never, never, never say it's all them without acknowledging our part in it. This is not a situation where someone is the victor and someone is the loser. Absolutely not. You're either together in this or you're standing alone. And nobody has to stand alone. I have seen a lot of, and I'm thinking of a particular client right now who is going through a very bad time. And because she's going through some health crises, she's cut out all her friends. And I said, what do you have to look forward to? Nothing. You know, I'm too busy doing all my health things. And I said, are you not even receiving phone calls from friends? No, I just let them all go to voicemail. Guys, you are in a community until the moment you kick off this earth. And you have a responsibility to that community, whether you are ill or whether you are healthy. Get going now. No man is an island. Okay. The next thing is something that I have spent 2 quarters on in my advanced class, and that is the word shame. Shame is on the rise these days. We all know because of social media, because of everybody having access to so much information, and everybody's got an opinion, right? I think it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. I think it is a narcissistic society to the extreme. And I think that's going to come back to bite us. Truly. The thing, too, is when you feel like shaming someone, you are just relieving yourself of the load. And you ought to work on that load of shame that every single person carries inside. I've never met anybody that doesn't have some sort of shame deep down inside. Sometimes it's shame enough to make you sick. Literally. Sometimes it's just shame that you would rather not look at, and you go through life not looking at it. It certainly does not make you resilient when life happens to you, when a death occurs, or when a divorce happens. Shame is one of the things that I think is a core issue for all of us. And I don't want to talk too much about it because literally I can talk for months about this one subject. And it needs to be addressed. The interesting thing is you can't address it early in your therapy. You're not going to give it to your therapist. Not the real deep core shame that motivates all of our lives and some of our decisions. If you're wondering why someone or you doesn't make good decisions, you might want to look at this. This author, whoever wrote this article, I've already forgotten who that was. Just a minute. Who was it? Catherine Brown Ramsberger, goes on to say that shame also creates a vicious cycle of codependency. We become too afraid to leave our partnership, our office, our friendship, and while they continue to make us feel less than, we still won't leave. And that is true. You know, I think it's really important that we make ourselves who we are. And we come into every interaction, whether it's these that she names or another, as a whole person, as a whole, meeting other, hopefully, wholes. What can't be worked out then? We may have to agree to disagree, but it's still an agreement where everybody wins. This isn't happening so much anymore, thank God. But it certainly did happen. I heard about people like this when I was young, and that is somebody who just gives up their life to devote. They're so glad to have a partner, an intimate partner, that all of their hobbies, all of their work, everything they've ever done goes right out the window. They just want to be a partner. Guys, nothing against partnership, but is that all you are? No. And you're never going to be happy giving up these things. I've mentioned in almost every show, balance points, balance points. I say that again, balance points. Balance points in my work are those things that are so essential to you, should never, ever give them up. I don't care who you're married to or what kind of work you have or anything. My balance points are I love nature and I love animals and I love people. That's very much a part of me. I'm highly creative. I've always got a project going, or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. I love all that kind of stuff. These are balance points for me. I could no more be me if I didn't do those things. I love to think. I love to research. I love to write. I can't give that up. And be me. What are yours? What are yours? Because if you're overtaken by, say, something like depression, depression is a repository where all this gets held so you don't have to look at it, right? It just simply a call, like anxiety, to let's open the box. Let's see what's in there. Let's get straight with it all. Let's feel better. But depression keeps you from knowing what you want to do, what you love. I've often said it's like you've got a great big table And there's some marvelous things on it that you just would think are fabulous. You'd love to pick up and look at and analyze and study. And you can't see any of them because there's a blanket over the top. It needs to be addressed, darlings. It just does. And it can be. And it ain't going to kill you. Isn't that nice? Another thing that I think really gets in our way is narcissism. I feel like we're all narcissists in our way. I'm going to address, though, a kind of narcissism that is separating you from people, but in a little while. I'd like that to be last. Let's go to another article whose title I abhor. Beware, if your man does these 15 things, he's majorly insecure. Let's take that out and say, if I do these things or anybody else, I'll recognize this as insecurity. One of the things is something that I have just mentioned in this. Oh, and by the way, this article is by Dawn Marie. Bless her heart, Dawn Marie. Pretty name. You've got to have outside interests and friends. The person you are with can't be the sole one. I'll say this too. Your work can't be the sole thing. If you're going to be a healthy and whole individual, you can't focus on one thing as the be-all and end-all. You cannot. So, how do you make friends? Let's start there, because this may be you. Sometimes we have friends that aren't very supportive friends. Sometimes we have friends that aren't very nice. Sometimes we wake up and realize, wow, I've had the wrong friends all along. Sometimes we outgrow our friends. That's fine. We start resenting when we ourselves stay in a friendship too long like that or take abuse. And that's not healthy. So if you're going to wish them well, for heaven's sakes, just get out, move on. Good morning, Sheila. I'm so glad you're here. So, how do you make friends? Well, in my opinion, friends are everywhere. And you do have to go and buy yourself something to eat once in a while. And you do have to go and shop for this or that. And you're out and about. And if you see someone interesting and intriguing, ask them to go out for a cup of coffee with you. Say, it's so nice to know you. We are in that neighborhood too. Well, it's very nice to meet you. Come on over and have a glass of wine with me one night. Let me find out who you are. That's wonderful. Reach out. And here's the hard part. Be the initiator, guys. A lot of times when we're in the ego child's mind, we sit back and we wait for other people to do it. Look, if you're going to have anything, you go get it. That's the bottom line. If you're going to have anything, go get it. I did an exercise one time in class. I think I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. And in class, I took a pen, it was just a pen, and I put it in someone's pocket in the class. And I said, okay, everybody wants that pen in class. You don't have any other pens. Everybody wants that one. What are you going to do to get that pen? And everybody was, confused. They looked like deers in the headlights. They didn't know what to do. I'm sure they tried to form some metaphysical conclusions or psychological conclusions about this, when one girl just went up and took the pen out of the pocket. I said, that's it. Simple as that. Get going. Go get what you want. Okay? The way you get what you want is gifts often come through people. So if you cut yourself off from your interests and you cut yourself off from other people, that is simply not a healthy thing to do. For any reason. Okay? And you certainly know that you are with the wrong person if someone encourages you to let your friendship and your interests go. And don't you do it. You listen to that voice inside of you. Okay. Another way you can tell if someone's insecure, and this may be you or someone else, is when somebody rushes a relationship. You don't rush relationships. Relationships develop organically, and they develop over a period of time. And so oftentimes I see people that are, what do I want to say, avoiding parts of themselves. And so to make themselves feel better, they have a very big fantasy life. So when they meet someone, let's say online, they already are in relationship with this person. And this goes for men and women. It's not don't you be thinking that this is just a women thing, because men fantasize like this as well. Loneliness is a great motivator. And if somebody hasn't found out how to be alone in a healthy manner and enjoy themselves, let me tell you, they're creating fantasy. If you create fantasy, darlings, fantasy is its own reward. You're not going to be creating the life like we talked about that is so important for you. And one of the things you'll do, because you want reality to match fantasy, is you rush a relationship. Guys, an exchange over the internet on a dating site is just that. It's a couple of paragraphs. That's it, okay? A phone call is just a phone call, nothing more. Having a cup of coffee with someone is just having a cup of coffee with someone. You are not in relationship. And yet, a lot of times, people that are doing this give themselves away. They call it a relationship. It's not a relationship. It's not a relationship, probably for 2 or 3 months, until you see whether or not you want to be in relationship. You see? So be careful of that. And here's the hard thing I'm going to ask you to do. Challenge your fantasy. Because the only reason you ever get disappointed is because reality doesn't match the fantasy. So the thing is not to keep trying to make the fantasy real, but to get rid of the fantasy and start seeing things as they really are. And by the way, seeing people as they really are, because that's the only honorable thing to do. If you are seeing only what you want to see and the idea of them and their potential that has nothing to do with what they want and their reality, you're doing a terrible disservice to them. And by the way, to you. It's not going to work out. Okay. So for God's sake, back off and don't rush relationships. And don't be rushed in relationships. One of the things that I've noticed for years is that somebody that has an active fantasy life, if I go for that in a session and I'm tearing that apart, and nobody wants that torn apart. Remember, this is your drug. This is your heroin. Okay? It hits the opiate centers of the brain. Everybody is addicted to fantasy until they're not, of course. So I'm going for this. It's interesting, because I'll find people seeking people who then will fantasize for them so they can buy into their fantasy. They're dropping theirs. We're tricky, guys. Our ego child's minds are tricky. The whole point is to be emotionally mature and grow up. Okay? All right, let's go to the next one. You can't be everything to somebody, and they can't be everything to you. I'm saying that with all my heart. It may seem flattering on the surface, but it is a problem. You have got to develop interests and be a whole individual who meets a whole individual. You understand? You cannot be someone's everything, and they can't be yours either, by the way. All right, the next point is you don't want someone, and you don't want to be someone that needs constant validation. We need to self-validate. We need to learn to do that, okay? To learn to self-validate. I had a case for a long time of, this happened to be a woman, but it can happen with a man too, who had to be told all the time by her husband, and she tried to get me to do it, which I wouldn't do it, that it's going to be all right. Is it going to be all right? Is it going to be all right? Is it going to be all right? Guys, kids, you just shouldn't have to answer that question. That's not a fuss if you do answer that question. That is saying that it certainly points us in the direction of what we need to work on, right? Which is that strong sense of self, so connected to the aspect of God that you are, that you can go there and ask questions. I think everybody knows everything, so what's the point in asking? I think that everybody knows everything if they're cleared out enough and beyond the drama of the ego child's mind. Do you see? All that dithering, oh, what do I do? Is just showing you're on the shallow surfaces of yourself. Take the dive and find out what's really deep down inside of you. There's a CD that I have out called Betraying the Inner Child. I believe you can get that on my website if you want to know more about this. Okay, let's see. Needing constant validation. I'll go into this. Everybody in the world wants to be told that they're loved, pretty, talented, attractive, intelligent, creative, desired. I get really tickled at some of the astrology out there because all of it is, you are so creative. I think there was even a joke years ago that every sign started out, you are so creative, because we want to be told we are, right? Okay. But when somebody needs constant validation, this is going beyond the niceties of hearing that from time to time and thinking it's wonderful. This is rather a chronic condition, and it does point you in the direction of bolstering your sense of self and who you are and getting your own validation from your own aspect of God's self, which is the truth teller inside. To do that, guys, I think so many of us, in our ego child's mind, we want to only be told how nice we are, how lovely we are. We don't want to see all the convolutions that we're doing, how manipulative we really are, what our secret motivations are, which aren't so nice. Guys, it's human. Why are you running away from it? It's just human. It's all aspects of your humanness, and only once you acknowledge that those things are there and own that those things are there can you say, I don't want to do that, I want to do this. The question is in the acknowledgement and the owning of it, because you're walking around, everybody is walking around saying, I don't want to do this anymore, I don't want to do this anymore, I want to change this pattern. That's lovely. The answers aren't there, or in the outside of you. The answers are in the acknowledgement, the absolute owning that this is what you do. And it'll go away when you do that, because you'll have the clear choice to be something more. Okay. The next thing is people who are emotionally insecure are jealous people. And again, it goes back to, where's your sense of self? Why be jealous of another when you're developing yourself? When you're not developing yourself, when you're not doing what you know you should do for your best interest. We are jealous of others. I want to say that that is really one of the big problems with your creating a wonderful life for yourself. Because if you're jealous of other people getting there before you, that actually blocks your progress. Why not you? Why not everybody? Why not? If he can do it, she can do it, you can do it. Go on, do it. Nothing stops you. Nothing stops you. Sometimes people who are emotionally immature are not developing themselves, are not finding out what interests them, and they'll make you feel guilty that you have something that you love, that you have people that you want to see from time to time. Everybody doesn't provide everything for everybody. You understand that. People love us in all sorts of different ways. If we just don't judge that love, we can enjoy everybody. There's no reason to be jealous. Choose well, and then there's no reason to be jealous that somebody's having an affair behind your back. And if they are, well, find out about it and let's either resolve it in some way or move on. There are all sorts of choices here to make. Okay. Someone who is emotionally insecure is also going to threaten. I'll get a divorce. I'm going to go back to mother. Whatever. There's no reason for that. But because an emotionally insecure person fears abandonment, they threaten you with abandonment. Look, I'll say everybody's emotionally insecure from time to time. We all have our moments, don't we? But guys, if you don't know out of that insecurity that love is more important than anything and a privilege, and you need to get back to that as soon as possible in a real way, not a fanciful one, then there's work to be done on you and on your sense of self and on your choices of partners that need to be better. Okay. The next one. Let's talk about tales of woe. The interesting thing about what I do in session is we need to find out everything that happened. We need to resolve it, and we need to put it in a bigger context so that it's emotionally finished for you and there's no energy to it. And then there comes a time in our development that there's only one thing left to do, and that is put down your story. Put down your story. Stop telling your story. Watch out for other people who go back into the past. Look out for the guy that wants to trash his ex-wife on the first date. Tales of woe, guys. The point of real love is to create a new model of love, not to go back into the past one, but to learn from past behaviors. We all say we don't want to create the same thing we did before, and yet, if you don't look at it, that's exactly what you're going to do. Look at yourself. Look at why you do the things you do, why you are reacting the way you react. And start speaking the truth about what's bothering you, because something is. And it doesn't make you weak for you to say, yeah, this is really bothering me. It makes you actually strong in the eyes of people that know better than your silly childhood beliefs about what a man or a woman are. Guys, being real and being human is the bravest thing you can do. So watch Tales of Woe. Now, here's the tricky thing. I mean, there's a reason all this is called the esoteric experience, isn't it? Because here's the tricky thing about what we just talked about. Too many people say, Martha has just said, drop my story, when they haven't done the work on themselves. You don't get to drop your story until you address these things that have been wrong. You don't get to do that. You have to address and own and go down there. You have to go down there. You don't have to relive it. You have to go down there. You have to be willing to go down there and get the trash to clean out a room, right? So what's wrong with you being a lovely, great big old man and saying, I feel vulnerable right now, and I don't want to do what I've got to do. A loving wife will come along, or a loving partner will come along and say, well, let's rethink it. If you don't like doing that, let's find somebody else to do it for us. Let's do that. You don't have to do it, sweetie. Or maybe I can help. Okay. You know, psychologists all say, oh, communication needs to improve. And quite frankly, yes, it does. Communication is a wonderful thing. But there are a lot of reasons why you don't communicate. And that's the part that needs to be looked at. You got to communicate to get what you want. And sometimes we're not doing it. I had a dear friend that died. She's been on my mind this month because the month of July, now it's August, but the month of July was her birthday. And I think she just suffered terribly with loneliness and feeling unloved. And yet she wouldn't let anybody in. She chose to drink instead. Isn't that interesting? She chose to drink instead of reaching out and saying how lonely she was and connecting and putting the drink away. We are in the way. We are. Nobody's out there to be in the way for us. We are. We might put somebody there, but we didn't. We are in the way. The point is to look at why and remove yourself and remove the beliefs that you have so that you can go on and live a fabulous life. It's right there for you. You know it. If you didn't know it, you would have no interest in a show like this. Do you understand that? If all was lost, you wouldn't be listening. So all is never lost. Okay, beware of someone, and I'm going to say this to you. You don't want to have anybody that is checking your phone, your texts, your emails, and looking over your shoulder that way. Now, I do say there's nothing to hide, and that's nice to live a life where there's nothing to hide, but still, there's some privacy that should be maintained. And I'm going to say that is, in my opinion, a healthy way to do things, when you have a little privacy, both of you. Pardon me. My, I don't know what is blooming or something up here. But once in a while, oh, I know what it is. We have had these horrible wildfires, as you know, in California. We're not in California, we're on the other coast. But the fact is, the smoke has drifted across here. We haven't seen a blue sky in a while. And it's settled in our Appalachian Mountains. So when we go outside, my husband and I have both noticed that we're rather irritated. So excuse me for sneezing and sniffling and choking. I think that's what it is. Poor people in California. And I just talked to my friends in Canada who are in Calgary. And their wildfires up there in British Columbia are devastating. They say they can't go outside at all, just to do the essential, like grocery shop. And they have been pretty confined for a long time. Watch out for someone who smothers you with attention and gifts, too. I think appropriate gifts at appropriate times are one of the nicest things we can all do for each other. I really do. But there are appropriate gifts and there are inappropriate gifts, and there are inappropriate gifts too early, too, And there are, I'll also say that not acknowledging a special day like a birthday is also equally devastating when it's an important birthday. Guys, come on. We give presents to say we love you, we like you, we're so glad you were born, we celebrate this day because of your being here, because of you being in our lives. And I think you can feel that. My husband and I have talked about this, you can feel when a gift is given with intention. And you can feel when a gift is not given with intention and it's just bought and it means nothing to the giver or the receiver. This is one of the reasons sometimes that we wear some jewelry more than others, because the energy just isn't in it, right? So going back to this, I think this is a bit like rushing relationships, okay? There are just things that are appropriate and not appropriate. So for God's sake, clean up your act, get out of the fantasy, and don't rush anything. Let things develop organically. And certainly, when they do, honor the days. But you be careful of trying to be the one to give the gifts and the attention too early, too much, or the one that is receiving it. I need for you to see it. I remember, this is a little off the subject, but not really. I remember years ago a woman came to me who wanted to work for my organization. This is when I had a big school and was doing a lot of not only teaching acting, but doing some open forum business coaching. And she wanted to work for this organization. And so I said, well, why don't you just tag along? Let me see how you do, and see what, I want you to just observe what I do. Well, she didn't just observe what I did. She was running ahead all the time, trying to be radar from MASH, constantly putting tea in my hand because I am a tea drinker and things like that. When I can get my own tea. I can do all this myself. And at the end of that night, I said, I like you very much. You're very sweet, and I appreciate all your intentions. But there's too much insecurity here. I can't take this kind of thing. It actually gets in the way. It actually gets in the way when it's inappropriate. You understand? I hope you do. It's not that I didn't appreciate all those things, but they were, again, done with the wrong motivation at the wrong time and inappropriately. Thank you for hearing that. Guys, nobody's moods, and I say this to you too, should depend on another person. We are all responsible for our own moods, our own happiness, our own soothing, our own joy, our own creativity, our own sadness, our own whatever. And if you find yourself going along with whatever the mood is, I don't think that's a good thing for you. What it says to someone like me is my sense of self isn't strong enough. It's not there and solid within me, so I can be responsible for my own emotional intelligence, right? It's extremely important. And again, part of your emotional intelligence is to realize you're feeling something and to deal with it before it comes out as blame or shame or any of these other things. Emotion is actually a wonderful thing. I mean, it's the base of all of beauty in the world and creativity and everything else. But guys, it's often cut off when your early childhood home was confusing. A child interprets everything that happens as if they created it. They don't know any better. It is all about them. So let's say the mother works and the father works and the kid has to come home by themselves. There is an opinion that forms from this, that nobody's there for you. Don't you get this? And if you are going to have a life where somebody is indeed there for you, you're going to have to do some different things. You're going to have to let them be there for you by talking about what you're feeling. Good. So nobody's moods depend on anybody else except the individual. And there's certainly ways to deal with that. And I've told you a big one just now. Read the sign. Anxiety, read the sign. Depression, read the sign. Whatever it is. And go down into yourself and find out what's worrying you. And talk to a friend or a therapist or someone about it. And together figure out a solution. Solutions are all around. Guys, I also think there is another telling insecurity, which is when you're oversensitive to criticism. No one likes to be criticized, but insecure people are going to take it and personalize it to the extreme. And sometimes they take, even when you say lovely things in a kind way, they're going to take it badly. In my opinion, it's because they criticize themselves too much. So when you add a little something on top, it's like, whoa, Vesuvius. So exploding. One of the ways that people handle that is Darvo. You remember our old friend Darvo? Do you remember this? This is a common thing. Darvo stands for deny, attack, reverse, victim, and offender. I'm going to say that again. Write it down because it's a very common thing that people do. It's not a healthy thing. As a matter of fact, it is an enormously unhealthy thing to do psychologically. Deny, attack, reverse, victim, and offender. If you want to know who was a master at this, look at some of Donald Trump's behavior. When he was attacked, he went into Darvo. Now, this is nothing about politics. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying this was the psychological condition that you could observe. Deny, attack, reverse, victim, and offender. And people who don't like to be criticized and are feel like that they are overly sensitive to criticism because they're so critical of themselves often go into Darvo and make it about you, no matter what. They're going to blame you. So the bottom line here, guys, is what is the driving force behind these behaviors? And I wish I could lecture on that. The truth is I cannot, because everybody's past is individual. They're the things, and I'm going to put this on the table because it came, I'm sorry, my printer is doing something odd. If you're hearing something odd, I'm hearing it too. Yesterday in my advanced class, one of my dear, dear, dear clients told really a perfectly dreadful story about her past. When it came to, pardon me, please, when it came to the next person to talk about herself and reveal herself, that helps sometimes get the mucus down. when it came to the next person, she prefaced what she said by saying, gosh, I feel so bad because mine is not nearly as bad as the woman that went before. And I wanted the class to understand this. I want you to understand this. Whether someone is raped in the barn or whether someone is called fat at the dinner table in front of guests, it is the same because of the wound. You have been wounded. It matters less how you have been wounded. Some things are more complex than others to get through, that's all. But don't dismiss the fact that you were wounded, because there isn't a human being walking this planet that has not been. The healthy ones of you acknowledge the wound and say, that just hurt me to the extreme. And I did this and this and this and this and this with it. And I'm not going to do that anymore. It is the fact of the wound, not what created the wound. And I hope you can understand that. Many times, if we have a lot of drama going on, we say, oh no, mine's the worst. Well, I'm going to take that away from you and say, don't say that if you want to get through it. Okay? Let's just get through it and do some work on the wound. The other thing I want to talk about here is narcissism. And I want to talk about a kind of narcissism that we haven't talked about in a show like this, and that is the antagonistic attachment version of narcissism. Now, I'm marrying two things together here. There are other shows that I have done on the attachment, the attachment styles that people have, and I think that's really important for you to go back and listen if you don't know what I'm talking about. This one is still yet a little bit different, an antagonistic attachment. So we're looking at narcissism, but we're looking at an antagonistic attachment style. This was written by Julie Hall. I didn't have a great deal of respect for this particular article. She goes on to say, securely attached humans approach relationships cooperatively. They work together to achieve shared goals. They seek and give empathetic validation. They share accurate and truthful information. They express affection and vulnerability to build trust and intimacy in their relationships. There may be conflict, there may be disagreement, but mutual support is the foundation of the relationship, and respect and love are not at stake. Isn't that a lovely paragraph? This is the secure attachment defense. But the other attachments are noted as insecure. And those are the ones I want you to go back and listen to the shows about. She goes on to say that by contrast, the narcissistic personality attachment with others is antagonistic, a concept in biology that refers to a relationship in which one organism benefits at the expense of another. Common forms of antagonism in nature are predation, competition, and parasitism. She goes on to say predation. A predator usually kills and eats its prey. And the reason I'm hurrying right now, guys, is I've got 10 minutes and I want to get this on its way to you. So that's the reason I'm speaking quickly and reading a little more instead of launching off into my thing, you know. A predator typically kills and eats its prey to gain life-giving energy. But more often there's a condition, and when we're talking about human relationships, of ongoing domination or subjugation. Because narcissists view all relationships as a struggle for dominance, they emotionally and perhaps also physically and sexually oppress, intimidate, and violate others to experience and maintain feelings of power and control. Narcissist displays of dominance may be flagrant forms of aggression, such as hitting, pushing, berating, name-calling, playing favorites, critiquing, and monologuing, meaning someone just goes on and on and on and on. Or they may be more passive-aggressive, maneuvers like dismissal, silent treatment, backhanded compliments, joking, barbs, veiled threats, not listening at all, and triangulating. Whatever the strategy, and however well it is rationalized or disguised, the purpose is to bully the other person into submission. Competition. Let's talk about what she says there. Competition is another type of this antagonism. Narcissists approach relationships oppositionally, viewing other people, including and often especially their family members, as competitors for resources. These resources may be tangible things, but often they are intangible, interpersonal resources such as attention, acknowledgement, inclusion, respect, admiration, and affection. Seeing life as a zero-sum game in which they can only win if someone else loses, narcissists continue to undermine and one-up those around them, while asserting their superiority and greater entitlement. Typical competitive narcissistic behaviors within families and other social groups include comparing, bragging, overtalking, blaming, cheating, exaggerating, diminishing, excluding, applying double standards, distorting and withholding information, and taking undue credit. Last one, parasitism. A parasite feeds off a host organism to the host's detriment, causing depletion, disease, and sometimes death. Between humans, parasitism shows up as exploitation in relationships, usually with the parasitic narcissist manipulating or coercing the other person into providing ongoing resources such as money, housing, privilege, social standing, sex, caretaking, or any other form of service. To render the host easier to exploit, the narcissist typically uses tactics such as isolation, guilt, seduction, fawning, and gaslighting that we hear so much about these days, while employing forms of intermittent reinforcement to create the illusion of reciprocity in relationship. The relationship not only drains the host of physical and emotional resources, but it also alienates that person from his or her own self-preserving instincts and inability to maintain safe personal boundaries. Now, I thought that was pretty damn good, that article. She goes on to say, and I do have 5 more minutes, so I'll tell you. People who are narcissistic this way seldom make their antagonism transparent, guys, for the simple reason that they'll suffer the negative consequences and nobody will like them very much. Okay. Even overt narcissists who are brashly superior and domineering know that they won't get far in life if they adhere to, or give the appearance of adhering to, some rules, unless they appear, or at least appear to adhere to, social norms and more provable states of being, right? So for narcissists, it becomes expedient to mask their harsh self-interest and contempt for others and develop more socially acceptable strategies for getting what they want in relationships. This is why sometimes these people are incredibly charming. They're agreeable, generous, caring, pious, noble people on the outside, right? And they're this way to attract a partner sometime, a professional relationships that will benefit them. But the disparity between the narcissist's public and private face, a difference that is often especially dramatic in the covert form of narcissism, is one of the most confusing and dangerous aspects of this personality disorder. This disparity makes the reality of the abuse for those targeted within families more difficult to recognize and even harder to call out. Antagonistic attachment results in profound trauma. Now, does it have an insecure base? Ladies and gentlemen, you betcha. You betcha. Now, guys, everything is changeable. But to have the happiest life and the deepest relationships, at least one of you, if not both of you, and both of you is ideal, must confront these things that are insecure within. It's just the way it is. We're all human. Okay? I love you all very much. We're going to stop there. I'll be back next week with another show. Kate, I want to thank you so much for tuning in today and for finding me. Good gracious. I'm glad you did. And we're here every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. on Daylight Savings Time right now. And I wish you all a wonderful week. You guys stay well and safe. Let's do a quick prayer. And what we're going to ask here is that you certainly wake up to some of this that you're doing or that somebody else is doing, and that we deepen and grow in love, because love rushes in to take the place of some of these things we let go of, and that's the good thing, you know. Dear God, we thank you so much for the gifts we are receiving right now, because we are the aspect of God known as us. Thank you, Peter. We are opening our hearts, our minds, our very being to change and to growth and to opportunity that lies here right now, beyond the old issues that we are now surrendering. Dear God, open us to let some of these old characteristics grow, and in our growth past them, let us recognize those who are suffering in our environment, in our communities, and who are doing this. We ask that we know who to help and who not to help, that we clearly see that, because everyone has the right to live and to die the way they choose.
90 seconds.
To make really good choices themselves, and we're allowed to make bad ones for ourselves as well. The only ones that we have to worry about is us right now in you, and being the most loving we can be in your energy. We open ourselves to that, dear God, to look squarely and authentically and with great awareness at how we live our lives.
60 seconds.
Every minute of every day. And we thank you for this, and we say our prayer now, knowing these things are so and fully in place for all of us, and so it is. Amen. Guys, I also want to say thank you so much for getting the word around about our shows. You're the front end of all of this for people. So through social media, through word of mouth, please tell people we're here. We sure would appreciate it, okay? That means a lot to us. Okay, God bless you. Thank you, Michelle, for being there. We sure do appreciate it, and for your message, and I love you all. You all take care out there and be healthy and well. All right. Bye-bye.